As it turns out, trying to get a degree requires time and effort. While I come to terms with this awful, awful news, let's take a look at some pop music real quick. These are my songs of interest.
I used to float, now I just fall down.
This season, the Barbie movie has pretty much stolen the spotlight for pop music, with several of its songs becoming bona fide hits by association. To its credit though, the soundtrack does a really good job of allowing its artists to preserve their identity while keeping on theme with the movie, to the degree that this soundtrack is accidentally a pretty good snapshot of 2023's pop music. Apart from Barbie World by Nicki Minaj and Ice Spice, which I covered last season, Dua Lipa's Dance the Night is basically a future nostalgia B-side to the B-sides to the cutting room floor of the B-sides. It doesn't really stack up compared to that album, but for what it's worth, everything but the chorus has been growing on me for a while now. My hot take is that this song would be better if it were in the third person, kinda like a disco version of 6 Inch by Beyonce. Other notable highlights include Lizzo's Pink, which will make this movie very awkward to watch for the rest of time, Charlie XCX's extremely Charlie XCX song Speed Drive, Sam Smith's inexplicably camp performance on Man I Am, Ryan Gosling's 80s rock ballad homage on I'm Just Ken, and Ava Max ripping herself off on Choose Your Fighter.
You can be a lover or a fighter, whatever you desire. Life is like a runway and you're the designer. All of the kings had their queens on the throne. We would pop champagne and raise a toast.
However, the highlight of this fashionably pink Barbie album is, apparently, the absolutely devastating piano ballad by Billie Eilish, where she tried to write about Barbie's plight in the movie and accidentally wrote a song about herself.
Turns out I'm not real, just something you paid for.
It's really impressive just how well she manages to toe the line between making the lyrics plot relevant and completely sensible out of context. While the album itself is little more than a solid collection of Barbie-themed pop music in the broadest sense, I really appreciate just how much care was put into allowing these artists to explore the possibilities of the theme. My favorites are Speed Drive, I'm Just Ken, What Was I Made For, and Angel by Pink Pantheress. Also, I thought Barbie itself was really good. My favorite part was when Nuclear Bomb Ken had sex with Communist Barbie and started speaking in Sanskrit. I think that sex scene added a lot to the movie.
I don't wanna fight your shadow.
Much like the main single Super Shy, this new New Jeans EP keeps the Baltimore/Jersey Club skeleton we all know and love, but branches out into more subtle house and techno leading influences. It's a pretty lightweight listen, and admittedly it's a bit weak compared to their previous releases, but the vibes are still pretty strong. Also, I physically cannot listen to ASAP. The extreme and incessant stereo panning makes the skin on the back of my neck crawl. I literally cannot listen to it for more than 10 seconds before ripping my headphones off my head and throwing them out the window out of sheer survival instinct. This doesn't mean the song is bad, it just means I literally cannot tell if it's bad or not.
I ain't proud of all the punches that I've thrown in the name of someone I no longer know.
No idea where Noah Kahn came from. Apparently he's been bubbling under for a while until now, but this rollicking, folkish, Mumford & Sonsy sound he's going for works pretty well in his specific case. His tale of heartbreak is pathetic and almost comical unless you're on the receiving end of it, but its unapologetic wallowing is exactly what gives it its power. That's the only reason why this remix with Post Malone makes any sense.
I die drunk, I die drunk, I die for you.
It's definitely fairly outside of his wheelhouse, but while he doesn't add much, he makes for a surprisingly inoffensive presence. Oh yeah, speaking of Post Malone.
Don't sober up, the sun is killing my buzz, that's why they call it morning.
This guy is in a really weird position these days. After spending the tail end of the 2010s absolutely dominating the charts as a singer pretending to be a rapper, apparent label disagreements and or trouble brought his fourth album and seemingly the direction of his career in free fall, at least for an artist of his stature. I've mentioned before that I actually kinda like 12 Karat Toothache. Its single choices hit a really bleak, thoroughly sad project. It's not a masterpiece or anything, but it was honestly pretty compelling and there were quite a few standouts from it. This time, it seems like his label's a little more on board. Austin is not as much of a downer, but Posty still makes a lot of laments about his fucked up relationships with his fame, his vices, and the people he slept with. A lot of it follows new wave, alt-rock, almost Britpop sonic influences, sorta like a better Harry's House. It's not as ambitious or impactful as his last album, but it's pretty serviceable and more digestible, probably for the sake of his label. My favorites are Something Real, Chemical, Socialite, and Laugh It Off.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 7 days a week.
Of all the Bangtan Boys' solo ventures in light of their military service, Jungkook's output has been some of the weakest up until this point. Between contributing to the re-lamification of Charlie Puth and being too boring even for the FIFA World Cup, I kinda assumed that he wouldn't even try to make an actual name for himself the way that Jimin or V have. That seems to have changed with the success of 7 featuring Lado, where Jungkook has found his artistic goal, becoming the 2020s version of Justin Bieber from 2012. It's not a bad thing to be if you can pull it off, that's just exactly what he's doing. I guess that's just what happens when you're a boy band member trying to emulate R&B. You end up sounding like a boy band from the 2000s trying to emulate R&B from the time. At the very least, Jungkook is hot as fuck, so he at least has that advantage over Justin. This is even more obvious with 3D, his following single with Jack Harlow. It's more or less the same stuff, except Jack has an all-time clunker in his verse.
When I seen that body, you would think it was a dead body. The way I told my boys come look.
Like, Jesus Christ, that makes my stomach turn. And don't even get me started on that other line. It's almost impressive how Travis Scott has seemingly remained exactly the same since Astroworld. You're allowed to interpret this statement however you like it to mean. My favorites are... actually, I don't remember them. Let me just pick them at random. How about the Beyonce one, the SZA one, and Fiend. Sure, why not? Fiend. Okay. I'm gonna try and keep this as brief as I possibly can, partly because I don't have time to go into it, but also because I shouldn't give these next 2 songs more attention than I already am, especially the first one I'm gonna cover. I know this is a dangerous minefield to walk through, but I personally feel like ignoring them altogether would not be right. I don't have to tell you that this song is just straight up racist, or at the very least extremely hateful. It knows exactly what it's doing, it knows exactly what message it's putting out, and exactly what audience it's targeting. All of its strawman arguments, false equivalencies, and macho posturing feed into a very clear pipeline that affirms horrific racism in the US. I do not have the time or expertise to explain why that's the case. I'm sure plenty of people are more qualified to speak on that. I just want to add that even on the surface level, this song is fucking nonsense. Jason Aldean doesn't seem to know how city life works at all, but he also sounds like he's never been within 50 miles of a small town in his life. He sounds like he's never left his gated community. When he says see how far you make it down the road, he sounds like that one Tumblr post that's like, don't mess with the Super Hulock fandom, we have the powers of time travel, demons, and British men on our side or whatever. It's fucking pathetic, and I'd treat it as a joke if I didn't know any better. Also, for the record, I've never gotten to talk about this before, but Jason Aldean has always been my least favorite country star way before this came out. The first time I heard Dirt Road Anthem, I knew immediately that he was a pretentious hack. For better or worse, this pretty much eclipsed the last song in the public discourse, and honestly for good reason. Whereas that song was just a racist dog whistle disguised as a delusional chest puff, Oliver Anthony actually tries to make a statement. It's not a good one, but at least it is one, and one that at least makes some good points at that. He laments on how the class divide of late-stage capitalism affects his life, with pretty raw, if unimaginative lyrics before he gets distracted and starts ranting about Epstein and supposed welfare queens for no reason. It probably is a better picture of what the average person in the country believes, but all that tells me is that the average person deserves a lot better than to believe in this. I could see a version of this song that's actually good, but apart from the objectionable second verse that misses the whole point of its own message, the song in general just sounds like a first draft. It's not particularly artful, and it doesn't really get a whole lot out of being raw and off the cuff. It kinda just sounds like you put a guitar in his hands and asked him to start venting about his awful day. This could have been a Tumblr post.
Cold shoulder, closing time, you begging me to stay till the sun rose.
Well, this is a pleasant surprise. TikTok is such a scary force, but I gotta admit, its taste in music is something else. Golden Hour by Casey Musgraves is... Wait, did you fuck up to get the wrong song again? Don't make me get the Weed Whacker. You swear this is the right song this time. I don't believe you. Let me see that. Well, I'll be damned.
But I remember you singing in that 88th Ford.
Well, in that case, I'm happy to see country music get a good #1 hit after this string of stinkers. It's not my favorite from that new Zach Bryan album, but both Zach and Casey do a real good job playing a dysfunctional couple lamenting their troubles. I'd love to see them work together again sometime. By the way, Zach Bryan's self-titled album is fantastic. It's really clear that he's lived one hell of a life. He's got so many fascinating stories to tell, and his visceral performances and his own productions sell every word. If you're curious, my favorites are East Side of Sorrow, Hey Driver with the Warren Treaty, Jake's Piano, Long Island, El Dorado, and Oklahoma Sun.
I know I used to be crazy. I know I used to be fine.
What a devastating power ballad about looking back on the chaos of your younger years, coming to terms with the ruthless passage of time that affects us all, and addressing those who hold your past sins against you long after you've grown and changed. Coming from truly one of the most enigmatic pop stars of our time who couldn't be more qualified to write a song like this. It doesn't work. I don't know if she made it sound like The Climb on purpose, but it undercuts her sincerity way more than I think she intended. This kind of sound works best for huge, universal declarations of kindness and togetherness. I know this because Rina Sawayama's Chosen Family goes for the exact same sound, same key and BPM and everything, and it makes me bawl every time because she makes every queer person in the world feel like they're safe and loved. Using that sound to write a deeply personal and specific song about your own life journey does a disservice to your own life journey. Miley's expressing the genuine traumas of her former child star plight with the sonic language of We Are the World. The sound is trying its hardest to dampen the impact of her lyrics, and it's a testament to her writing that I still feel them at all.
I guess it goes like na 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 na.
I find it really interesting how EDM these days has trended towards unabashed 90s nostalgia. It makes sense as part of the whole 20 to 30 year nostalgia cycle, but I'm just kind of surprised that seemingly the biggest EDM hits these days sound like they would fit perfectly in a post-USSR Eastern European rave. I'm still conflicted about how this ties into our general escape into the sounds of yesteryear and the phenomena that fuel this fire, but I'm definitely not too good for this. Peggy Go has just crafted the perfect vibe. I love that little thing, you know, that like... that thing, I love that.
We'll get in your car and you'll lead to kiss me. We'll talk for hours and lie on the backseat.
If I had a nickel for every time some random woman based in Europe came out of nowhere with a great song called Strangers, etc, etc. I can't verify how good this is until I've driven to it at night though. Thankfully, I pulled in Olivia Rodrigo and got my driver's license last week. It was actually like 4 months ago, but shh. So let's go out driving and try it out. Oh my god, I love this song. That's crazy it came up now. It's almost like I did this on purpose. Oh shit. We only spoke for months. Fuck you. Oh my god. We only spoke for months. But did you really mean? We'll get in your car and you'll lead to kiss me. We'll talk for hours and lie on the backseat. Good song.
Slamming you out, slamming you out, slamming you out.
Given that I haven't heard anything earlier in his discography than Certified Lover Boy, I haven't had the chance to experience a good Drake album yet. This is not that, but for what it's worth, it's probably the second closest I've heard Drake get so far. He's at his most dad jokiest on this record, but I prefer that over him being entirely boring or wildly misogynistic. He's thankfully downgraded that to being sort of boring and somewhat misogynistic, which is better in my book. My favorites are Daylight, First Person Shooter with J. Cole, What Would Pluto Do, and Rich Baby Daddy with Sexy Red and SZA.
Look at me, look at me. I'm naked.
This album is the sonic equivalent of hearing that a new haunted house is opening up in your town this Halloween, and you hear so much buzz about how scary it is and how many people it's sending to the hospital. But once you actually get there, it's just a few cardboard cutouts of famous horror movie villains covered in fake cobwebs with shitty RGB lighting effects. I kinda anticipated this, given that Paint the Town Red does absolutely nothing for me. I don't really get why this was such a big single apart from sheer timing given all her controversies and whatnot. It does sorta sound like something that could have come out earlier in her career, but apart from that, it feels like Much Ado About Nothing. This album's not bad by any means, but especially compared to the hype, it's pretty lightweight and forgettable. My favorites are Demons, Go Off, Agora Hills, Love Life, and What Do You Mean Freestyle. Congrats to Mitski on finally getting an actual hit. I feel like this has probably secretly happened like 5 times before, but at least it's official now. I haven't had enough time to really sit with her latest album, but for what it's worth, My Love, Mine All Mine was an immediate standout. Turns out she can make a mean mid-century ballad. Her gorgeous voice and her heartstring-tugging lyrics about the mere act of love are such a beautiful compliment to the laid-back pedal steel-driven production. Take that, Steven Sanchez.
I will want myself. Let me please believe it. I'll put you through hell.
For For a song that can fit within Twitter's upload limit, it sure packs a punch. The use of the promiscuous drums is shameless, but apart from being produced by Timbaland protege Ryan Tedder of all people, it also remembers to actually write a good song around its sample, like Ives Afterlife from last year. Its cowbell hook is inspired and infectious, and the rest of the production backs it up perfectly. Tate herself is an interesting presence, no matter how you cut it. After knocking off Billie and Olivia, she has set her eyes to knock off Britney, which is definitely a gutsy move that I respect if nothing else. I honestly still don't know if this works for her, but the tune is so good that I'm willing to turn a blind eye to it. Probably should have gone to someone like Normani or something though. She would have killed it. Oh yeah, speaking of a gutsy move, in a lot of ways, Guts delivers everything I could have hoped for a sour follow-up. Olivia has developed her vocal chops further. She and Dan Nigro really commit themselves to new sonic territory with the 90s and 2000s alt-rock focus. And most importantly, Olivia's done a much better job fleshing out the narrative themes of this album. For better or worse, Olivia has had to go through some much rougher relationship troubles, and she's honed her songwriting craft to paint a much fuller picture of her experience. By that, I mean it sounds like she's got more to say about it than it took him 2 weeks to start dating her. Her sad songs are broadly visceral and gut-wrenching like before, but we also find a new dynamic to her personality, messy and regrettable self-indulgence. Songs like Bad Idea Right and Get Him Back channel her chaotic, questionable feelings into truly anthemic, relatable, and downright humorous jams that both provide levity to the more emotional tracks and accentuate her turmoil. Oh hey, you look familiar. Some tracks do feel a bit lacking individually, even though they play important roles in the album. I still stand by my criticisms of Vampire from my last video, even though I will say the chorus has been growing on me for a bit, and Love is Embarrassing feels a bit underwritten. While the Grudge's not-so-subtle echoes of Driver's License undercut what would otherwise be a devastating ballad. Otherwise though, Guts' unassuming presentation obscures a really substantial progression in Olivia's artistry. I would love to see her venture even further out into new ideas in the future, but for now, the future's still looking bright for Olivia. My favorites are All American Bitch, Bad Idea Right, Lacy, Logical, and Teenage Dream.
And that's all for fall. For all the mess that's plagued the charts, I think there's been a lot to love this year. Hopefully life was kind enough to let me see you again this season. Have a good one, y'all.
At the same time.